Namaste, everybody. Namaste, Lynda. How are you doing today?
Namaste, Kausthub. I'm very well, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Very good to see you. Very good to see you. I'm so glad that we are doing this interview today. Can you hear me well, Lynda?
Yes, it's perfect, thank you.
Good. So, dear friends, if you are able to hear us, please let us know if you can hear us. We would be very, very happy if you can confirm that all the audio and video and everything is fine. So, welcome, dear friends, and welcome, Lynda, to our 14th session of what we call Sri Shakti, the woman of Viniyoga. We are so happy today to have Lynda from New Zealand, originally from Netherlands, but now for living in New Zealand for many, many years now, to be part of this conversation. Welcome, Lynda. How do you feel to be part of this series of conversations?
Well, I feel honored. I was honored and somewhat surprised, and then I've spent the week sort of fluctuating from being a little nervous about talking live, and then have had a wonderful time reminiscing about lots of things. So I'm
That's
happy to be here today.
That's excellent. That's excellent. And I'm sure that many, many of the people who will be tuning in today or will be watching the rerun later will be very, very happy to hear your story. So, dear friends, Lynda is one of our wonderful Viniyoga therapists living in Wellington, New Zealand. And she is also a Vedic chant trainer, which actually is a very big surprise for me because in the beginning years of my visits to New Zealand, I always thought that New Zealanders did not like chanting. Uh, and surprise, surprise, many years later, we are so glad to have so many Vedic chanting teachers in New Zealand now, and Lynda is one of them. And you're doing a lot of Vedic chanting with my mother, so that's fantastic. So, Lynda, what about beginning today's conversation with a chant that you can offer to all of us today?
All right, be my pleasure. Oh. Shraddhaya Agnisamidhyate Shraddhaya Vindate Havihi Shraddham Bhagasya Murthani Vachasa Vedayamasi Riyagushradhe dadataha Riyagushradhe didasataha Riyam bhojeshu yachvasu Idamma uditam kridhi Yatha deva asureshu Shraddha mugreshu chakrire Evam bhojeshu atsu Asmakamuditam kridhi Shraddhan deva yajamanaha Vayurgopa upasate Shraddha gung hridayaya kutya Shraddhaya huyate havihi Shraddham pratarhavamahe Shraddham madhyandinam pari Shraddha gung suryasya nimrichi Shraddhe shraddha paye hamma Shraddha devanativaste Shraddha vishvamidam jagat Shraddham kamasya mataram Havisha varthayamasi.
Excellent, excellent, Lynda. Thank you so much for sharing this. Of course, this is one of my favorite chants because it is a chant on Shraddha, which is my daughter's name. So I'm often thinking of her when I hear this chant. Why did you choose this chant? Can you share with us? This is a chant that is called Shraddha Suktam, my dear friends. So why, Lynda, did you choose this chant for our beginning?
I chose this chant because actually I have a really strong memories of learning this chant and then feeling like this chant was like a medicine for me. And it was the first time I'd experienced that with a chant, because we had learnt in our teacher training from Sasha Kronfeld a few other chants before this, and I liked them and I enjoyed the process. But this one, I think, came to me at a time when I was feeling like everything I knew was kind of having to be left behind, and I was having to hold on to something. And this honestly was like on repeat for me. I used to use it like some kind of drug. Like I would just feel like I needed this chant just to, and weirdly, in a little loop in the middle, because there's a place where you can, go back instead of forward. It's weird. So it's just one of those chants that really it really helped me, and I think I really understood the power of the chant, of the chanting. So I thought I wanted to start with that.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you. Yes. And I do know that part of the Shraddha Suktam where you can keep going in like an infinite loop.
Yeah.
Or not paying attention. It just kind of, the words are very slightly different. And then you go back and forth again and again. I know this. This is very common in many Vedic chants. They are just doing it, I think, to test whether we are paying attention or not. It's in some other chants as well. So Linda, so first question, always I ask the same question to a lot of people. What brought you, or how was your beginning, the origins to the wonderful tradition of Viniyoga? I think you confirmed to me that we met way back in 2008. So can you share a little bit about the origins, the first days?
Yes. I guess I should go back a little bit before then to explain how I came to know about your seminar that I attended. I started teaching yoga a long time before that with my brother at his studio. And way back then, there was a student in my brother's class called Ruth Diggins. And I had actually taught a class for him when he was absent. He was away somewhere, and he asked me to stand in for him. And I think I taught Ruth maybe once, maybe twice, I'm not sure. And so a long time had passed since then, and we'd gone different ways. I'd stayed with the studio and then eventually set up a studio with a friend. And I'd kind of forgotten her name, really. I certainly had forgotten her surname. And I received at my studio a little flyer or actually I received an email from a woman called Ruth asking if she could advertise the seminar at our studio. So I said, sure, send the flyer. And it was a flyer for your seminar on the Yoga Sutras. And so I put the flyer on the board, and I thought maybe some of our students would be interested. And I kept looking at it thinking, it sounds very interesting to me. So I went along and I walked into the room, and as soon as I saw Ruth, I realized it was Ruth, who I'd met before. So it was kind of a super. So I think she kind of reeled me in. But I have my little notebook from that day, and it was October 2008. And you were teaching the Yoga Sutras from chapter 1, and I think it was probably the second seminar. I didn't know about the first one because we jumped in at number 123.
How auspicious! How auspicious!
It was very auspicious. Ishvara Praniyanadva. So that was my introduction, and I was pretty excited about it, actually. I was quite blown away by it because I had done quite a lot of different yoga trainings, several complete teacher trainings and a few modules from other trainings. And I'd never really heard about this before. I'd had a little bit of an introduction to the Yoga Sutras from chapter 2, which pertained to asana practice, but there was no context for those. So this was really very powerful. Yeah. That's amazing.
Very good, very good. So you began there, but what has sustained you all along so far?
Well, what happened there was I wanted to know more about it. And I had got to a point in my teaching that actually, I was actually on the verge of giving up teaching yoga. And I was actually on the verge of giving up yoga altogether because I had a few injuries that I had really struggled with. And I hadn't really been able to figure out what to do with it all. And the studio that we were running was sort of coming to a close anyway. We had the option to close the studio and let go of the lease. So I sort of felt like, actually, I think I'll let it go. And then this really piqued my interest. So I wanted to know when you were coming back. And I think it was going to be another year. So I thought, well, that's a bit long. So I got in touch with Ruth and we had a few meetings and started a friendship with Ruth, a relationship, and in which we were sort of talking about the kind of yoga that you guys were teaching. And I think it was probably about maybe a year and a half later that she was announcing the teacher training. So then I signed up for her teacher training, which was the first one in New Zealand that she was doing. So so that's where I went. And I think in answer to your question about what sustained my connection with Viniyoga, actually, when I saw the teacher training flyer, it said that each person would have their own mentor. And that was very interesting to me because I had been teaching and trying to create sort of a cohesive approach to my teaching from all these different influences that I had, but I'd never really had a mentor to help me hold it all together. And I hadn't ever really had anybody write a practice for me. So that seemed like a really good thing to be involved with. So I signed up for the teacher training. And I think what sustained me really was my connection with Ruth. And well, I know that for a fact. And I think that's where this Shraddha came in. It was like in the beginning, I didn't know what we were really understand what we were doing with the asana practice. It felt like it was not very much compared to what I was used to doing. And so Ruth was writing me these practices and they seemed very minimal to me. And so I was doing them and then I was doing another practice just to make sure I got some decent asana under my belt each day. And just slowly but surely, I think, I was able to let go of that, but it took a while. It took a while to trust it. So I think, I think it was the relationship with Ruth that sustained me for it, a good long time.
That's excellent. That's excellent. And just so that our friends who are watching know, Ruth is somebody we interviewed, my dear friends. It's the interview number 6, and we will get the link posted on the comments. So if some of you missed it, you can always watch it. Ruth is also one of our Viniyoga trainers in New Zealand, and that's who Lynda is talking about. Lynda, I just have a curiosity, and I think it will be worthwhile for people if you clarify just a little bit, because you said that you were given a very simplistic practice and you used to do a little bit of asana, extra asana on the side. Can you kindly share with us why you did that? What was the reasoning behind that? I'm sure people are curious to know what it is.
So my introduction to yoga came because I was needing to strengthen myself physically. So I was going to dig out a photo to show you what I looked like before I did what happened to me. I had twins, so I had this quite intense pregnancy and childbirth with my twins, and it had left my body with a little bit of, weakness, and it was a cesarean birth, so I had very little strength in my stomach muscles, and picking up and putting down two children, two babies, had left me with some knee issues. So I actually came to yoga because I had physical ailments. So I had an injury, and I was recovering from, those early years of motherhood, all the heavy lifting. So the Iyengar practice that I had been doing and the initial teacher training I'd been doing was a very physical practice, and it made me feel really strong, and I really liked that feeling. I really liked feeling that I had strength in my arms and my legs, and that I could, I like that feeling. And I enjoyed it because when I was a child, I always used to do gymnastics. So it also reminded me of that feeling of being, fit and able to do lots of different movements, and really loved it, actually. We did lots of big back bends and headstands and handstands and forearm balance, all these sort of attic postures. And it is a really wonderful feeling, when you can do them. Unfortunately for me, I had sort of kept doing them a little bit too long and probably at times when I shouldn't have. So I think the reason I kept doing it was because I felt afraid that I would lose that strength and that I wouldn't be able to do those postures and have that feeling anymore. And so I had trouble giving that up, I think. So it was quite a rush, those postures give you quite a feeling of, it's just quite a buzz to be on your hands and upside down. And
Yeah, I know. I know.
so I think that was difficult to let go of. Yeah.
So anyway, thank you for sharing. That's very useful for us, and I think many people will appreciate that. Um, so, Lynda, what in your view is unique to the Viniyoga tradition? I mean, you obviously were doing yoga much longer before, but then you've sustained yourself in this tradition for about 10, 11 years now. What is it that, 14 years or so? So what is it that is unique about it? What, in your view?
Um, I think the main thing for me that I've really appreciated about it, not just for my own practice but also for teaching yoga, is that there are so many different ways that you can approach practice with Viniyoga. And no matter how you're feeling, or what you're able to do, or whether you're injured, or if you're in a cycle of, I don't know, at the moment I'm going through menopause, so you have those waves of exhaustion and times where you really can't do very much in the way of a physical practice, but there's always a practice, there's always a process that is grounding or nourishing. So I like all of that. I like the I guess the wholeness of it. It addresses everything. But the thing that really first, after coming to the seminar and learning about the Yoga Sutra, and then doing the teacher training and learning all the different models, and the way that in the practices, we sort of learn where that all comes from. So it has this sort of grounding that I hadn't really had before. It's really deep. And I feel very held by that. I feel very held by the fact that we're working from a very, just a very deep philosophy. and I find it really nourishing. And I also feel like, you know, having a mentor and knowing that the tradition has, you know, it always has that support. I feel like the Sangha is really supportive. There's a lot of people practicing like this now, so we have a lot of support around the world as well. And yeah, just a real appreciation for the authenticity. I really love that. A lot of the trainings that I had done before were they were offered from a really wonderful place, like the people that were teaching us, but it felt to me like it was their interpretation of yoga. Whereas this feels to me like this is yoga, and it's for me to receive it in an authentic way, and then I can offer that out in a way that feels authentic from me, without kind of taking on someone else's, I don't know how to say that, like someone else's approach or someone else's style. It feels more like this is coming straight in, and then I can figure out how that makes sense to me. Yeah. I think that, yeah, I'm not sure if I'm explaining that very well, but it feels pure to me.
I think you're explaining very well. I think you're explaining very well. You talked a little bit about mentoring, like twice now you've mentioned about it. So can you just say a few words about how that has been helpful to you? And in turn, how you are helping your students, because you are mentoring quite a few people now.
Yeah. I think the mentoring has been amazing because it hasn't, I think I initially assumed that it would be about how to teach, you know, how to teach yoga and how to practice yoga. But it's so much more broad than that. It's a really, it's a process that really supports me in my life. And, you know, having been in this process now for over 10 years, or yeah, almost 11 years since the teacher training started, you know, it's quite a lot of life. So quite a lot of things happen in that time. You know, there's family stuff that goes on, there's physical stuff, there's emotional things that we go through, and I sort of feel like the mentoring process is there for all of that. You know, sometimes it's just about things outside of the practice, and it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with asana or pranayama at all. You know, it's just seeing the person and holding the person. And I think it's also sometimes quite confronting because it's quite an honest process. You know, sometimes you have to hear things that aren't so pleasant, but they're really good to know, because then you can, then you can see yourself.
And how do you manage when some things are confronting? How do you manage, especially when your teacher is telling you something that is a bit confronting? I mean, the modern day tendency is to run away and find another teacher who tells us something that is pleasant to hear. So how do you deal with it?
I was kind of stomp my feet and mutter and, you know, complain, get it out of my system, and then get on with it, I guess. Yeah. I mean, I think this whole idea about Shraddha, you know, that trust that you build, it's not like these very confronting conversations happen at the beginning. It's first there's support, you know, and there's a connection that's built, and there's a feeling of, you know, being held by that, so that the difficult conversations can happen later, you know. But I mean, the thing that really the thing I think is hard about mentoring is when you see something and you're not, you know, and you have to just wait. That patience that's required, you know. I think there's several times in the process where I've looked back and I thought, oh, I'm sure Ruth saw that quite a while ago, you know, and I just didn't see it. And then she just had to wait until I could get on that same page.
It's what I try to remind my students all the time, that my role is a teacher. My role is not an entertainer. So I'm not here to say pleasant things to the people. I'm here to say the challenging things to my students, not always the pleasant things, you know, or pleasing things. You know. So, yeah, and Lynda, leading from there, obviously you also talked a little bit earlier about the different kinds of um, ways that Viniyoga can fit and things like that, which is because we have a lot of different varieties of tools and techniques that we can introduce to the students. What are some of your favorite tools that you have embraced and you continue to embrace in your life and practice? But what has left deep impact on you?
Mm. Well, clearly the chanting is having quite an impact. That's sort of taken me by surprise, really, how much I love that. And yeah, just really, I remember a time, when I really found it difficult, and I found it very difficult to make a sound because it's, can be quite confronting because whatever comes out comes out. And I don't know if you know this about me, Kausthub, but I'm a perfectionist a little bit.
For the record, oh, how could we forget?
So, you can't really be a perfectionist when it comes to this because it just doesn't work that way. Some of the chants don't let you do that. So, but I remember the moment where suddenly something shifted, and it was a chant. I don't remember the chant. I just remember the time that it was after the teacher training in one of the retreats that Ruth was there. It felt like it just loosened something, it just shifted something. And I think it just reminds me also of that feeling that I was describing before about strength, the thing that I really wanted to hold on to. I think what the chant started to give me was this feeling of strength that was coming from inside, as opposed to that feeling of strength that's like muscular and, that physicality. So, yeah, I think I was able to let go of some of that sort of desire to do those big yoga postures because of the chanting, because I could feel that there was something else that was bringing me a strength, but it felt very different. So I love the chanting. I absolutely love it. And I've been so lucky to be able to chant with your mother all this time throughout, the lockdown. And the other thing that I've really loved about it is all the different ways in which ritual comes into the practice. I really love that because I come from a background in which there wasn't really very much of that, but it's quite natural to me. Like I love it. I love ritual. And so even just, every time we chant those prayers to the teachers, that ritual, that honoring of something that creates a sacred space. I love that so much. And I don't think I ever had a language for the spiritual, because my family of origin is not really that way. I don't know. It just was never there when I was growing up. It may be that it's there, but it's not, it wasn't overt anyway. And so for me to have access to ritual that creates a sacredness is really powerful. I love that. And because of the experiences I've had with, especially in the yoga therapy training, I also really, really love the pilgrimage, to actually set an intention to go and have an experience or, find some healing and have a process for that, to have a process in which, there is a ritual that you can do that's got really, really personal meaning. I think that's a really powerful aspect of Viniyoga. Yeah.
I'm sure you have some stories to share about these examples of ritual and pilgrimage and all that, because, I think our audience would love to hear about it, because many of them just know about asana or pranayama as the tools, maybe chanting as a tool, but not necessarily things like ritual or pilgrimage. Can you share some stories, Lynda?
Yeah. Let me think about which one to share. So I'll start with the story about. I guess I should give a little background. You mentioned at the beginning that I come from the Netherlands, and I had been living in New Zealand since 1974. So it's quite a while now. So I immigrated when I was 12. My parents decided to leave the Netherlands and come to New Zealand. And unbeknownst to me, I mean, I didn't realize that there was a trauma connected with that immigration, because I hadn't really ever heard about that, you know. And so in my mind, I had some other things that had left a mark, or, you know, a trauma in me that happened to me in the Netherlands. And so we talked, you and I and Ruth together talked when we were in Chennai in one of the training modules for the yoga therapy training, where it became clear to me, it had become clear to me that I needed to go back there to do something, to go, you know, to visit a specific place. And I felt like maybe reclaiming a piece of myself, something like that. And I remember talking to you about it, and you mentioned that we could do a preparation practice, and then if I could organize myself to go there, then I could do a ritual there, and then there was going to be a post-ritual practice. And so the preparation practice, I think when we came back to New Zealand, took about 4 months. I did a practice for 4 months leading up to it, preparing myself for it. And I have a really wonderful cousin in Holland who has a spiritual practice and who opened up her home to me so that I could do this process. And I made it very, because I've been back to the Netherlands a few times as an adult. And if you go back to visit and you're just visiting as opposed to on a pilgrimage, then basically all you do is chat to people, drink coffee, eat cake, and have the same conversation over and over again. So I had to create an expectation for the people there that I would come and do this healing and that it was a pilgrimage. And so that was actually quite, you know, it was quite interesting writing those emails and letting people know that, because I thought, you know, I didn't know how they would receive that. So that was the first wonderful thing, was that people were so positive about it. And I still had these aunts in Holland who were in their 90s. And when I said I wanted to come and talk to them about my family and to find out more about my parents and about the immigration, they were so happy. I was so blown away by that. So I went there, and I had several cousins also write to me saying that they wanted to do, you know, some healing. And so, but this one cousin, my cousin Lise, she was there supporting me. And I don't know if you remember when we talked about the ritual, you said to me that I would have to find some water and submerge myself. Do you remember that conversation?
Yeah.
And I went, like, my face must have been something like, how am I going to do that, Kausthub? And you turned your computer around to me and it had the map of the Netherlands on it, and it's basically all water. So you said to me, well, that's going to be simple.
Netherlands has so many canals and rivers.
I know, but you know, I mean, in that moment, I was like, oh, how am I going to do that? But as it turned out, because the intention was there and because the ritual was so beautiful, actually on the day that we did it, on a full moon day, I ended up in the perfect place at my aunt's house by a lake. And honestly, it couldn't have been more amazing, really. And then the next day when I sat down to do my post-ritual practice, I actually just sobbed. I just cried. I just thought the whole thing was so beautiful, and it was such an experience of yoga therapy and, you know, the healing that took place for me, but also for my aunt, you know, the two aunts that I spoke to, an uncle, my cousin. It was just really quite powerful, you know, it was quite amazing. So, you know, I mean, it takes something, doesn't it, to create that and to be prepared to do that and to have those conversations. And it was amazing what came out of that for me, because I learned about my grandmother and how much she missed my father when he left, and what that created for my aunt who was looking after her. That was just all these stories that I had never known, and I never would have known because if you go for a coffee and a piece of cake, no one tells you these things, you know, but if you set that intention and have that conversation, it's incredible what people share. So that was a very beautiful, beautiful time. And it created a really strong connection with one aunt in particular, who always I've loved. You know, I used to stay with her when I was a kid because her daughter I was very close with my cousin. And so I guess that sort of leads on to the next story. Shall I go into that story about, is that
Yes.
all right? So that lovely aunt, actually at the age of 92, she came to New Zealand to visit us once more, which was incredible. And it was really, it was really special to have her come here again and see our family. But then soon after she went back to the Netherlands, she became ill, and when she was dying, she said she wanted to go home. She didn't want to be in the hospital. And I contacted you and was telling you about my aunt and wanting to know what I could do to support her. Because, you know, by this stage, I'm back over this side of the world and she's over there. And my two cousins, her daughter and the cousin I stayed with, were both supporting her. So I wanted to somehow help hold that as well. And I'd been chanting because that felt really good to do. And then you sent me a recording of the Narayana Upanishad,
Correct.
which when I received it, I thought it was the middle of the night over there. But I didn't want to wait until the morning. I thought I'll just send it because it just felt like it needed to go there. And so I sent it to my cousin who was going to be sitting with my aunt. She took it with her, the recording, and she played it to her in the last moments of her life. And it was really beautiful. It really helped her. It calmed her down. And it was really wonderful feeling to be connected. I could chant it here. You were chanting it there. My cousin was hearing it. My aunt was receiving it, even though she was no longer, you know, responding. Well, she was responding, but she wasn't talking. And so then I had a conversation with my cousin after my aunt passed, and she told me about it, and it was beautiful. And then I went out for a walk. I went over the hill to see my friend Namnita, who lives just over there. And as I walked up over the hill, I saw this. I had to print this picture for you. I saw this cloud.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
And I knew it was her.
Yes.
Every time I look at it still, I feel like she was just there, you know? She was just wrapped. It's like she's wrapped in there. And she's just right above the hill and so close, you know, right. I could see that from my house. It was, so yeah, those things are really magical.
It is, isn't it? The power of energy. It's transcendent of space and time and all kinds of boundaries of language, of culture, of religion. It's so powerful. Thank you for sharing such a personal story, two of them,
Yeah.
to our audience. I'm sure they love it.
And they were linked, you know, those two stories, because that connection was created by that trip with those rituals. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I think I wrote in my in the Viniyoga Teacher of the Month piece about what happened after I came back from that trip. After living in New Zealand for 44 years, I felt like I finally had, you know, let go of that feeling that I was still supposed to be over there. And so I applied for my New Zealand citizenship.
Oh, wow.
So in 2018, I became a Kiwi. So that also, you know, felt like a real landing for me. Like I really finally just put my roots down here and And I think it's because of that feeling that actually energetically we are connected. I don't need to keep holding on to that, you know, proof in my passport that I am that. It's like, well, that's already there. So.
Yeah. And Linda, there was also one more thing that I think it would be wonderful if you shared. Is it's about the the pilgrimage to the holy Tamarind Tree. What was your experience about it?
Yeah, that was amazing. That was another beautiful pilgrimage. Um, so at the end of our yoga therapy training, you took us to the Tamarind Tree. I can never for the life of me remember the name of the places we went to because they're too hard to remember or pronounce. But so maybe you can say where that is. I'm not.
It's a very holy place called Alvar Tirunagari.
Mm. So we went there, and before we went, actually, Evelyn had said to us that because we were going to a place where there were 9 temples that were linked to the Graha, the Navagraha temples, that it would be really, really nice if we went and had a reading by a priest who did the astrology reading, so that we would know which of these temples, you know, was potentially a strong influence for us, like which of these planets or these grahas, you know, featured in our chart. So I went and did that. And that was really interesting because it felt like another preparation, you know, like these pilgrimages feel more powerful when you're preparing like that. So we did that, and I found out that my nakshatra was linked to the Rahu, to the temple, you know, the Rahu Graha.
Wow.
So I just had that in my mind, but you know, I mean, I had no idea what we were going to do really, you know, what to expect, what it would be like. It was an amazing trip. I remember we got stuck at the airport for all that time trying to get there.
Yeah.
And then we finally got there. It was really wonderful
The
into
gods,
the, you know,
the gods were testing us.
they were, but we persevered. And then on the day that we went to the first time we went to the Tamarind Tree, the temple, it was raining so hard. It was really quite amazing. But yeah, we did that. I think we go 3 times to the Tamarind Tree
Yeah,
temple.
3 times. Yeah.
And was that in a Mercury temple? I'm trying to remember which of the grahas that one is.
The Tamarind Tree is the Jupiter.
The Jupiter temple, that's right, the Jupiter
It's the
temple.
Jupiter.
Yeah.
Guru, very, very big, very powerful. It's the biggest temple of all in those 9 temples.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
Just walking in there was such a powerful feeling. And yeah. I don't know how to describe that feeling, actually. It just felt so intense. And then we went to all those other ones too. You know, we visited all 9. And personally, I mean, I don't know, you know, obviously having had this chart read, I had some desire to know what I would feel in this Rahu temple. And it was quite a small temple. It's sort of, you know, set away from the other ones a little bit, and compared to the Sun temple, for instance, it was quite you know, just quite small and maybe even a little bit more friendly feeling in the beginning. I don't know, but less imposing. But it was so powerful in there, walking around in that, you know, in the space around the temple, like inside the wall. There was a tree there, and I just stood by that tree for quite a while and just felt really like it really had some energy that it was sharing with me. And then we were there for 3 days, I think. We did a lot in 3 days. So, but we had the opportunity once to come back to that temple, and I went in there. I think you all went to the river. You were by the edge of the river. And Ruth said to me, I think she could tell that I wanted to go back into this temple. So she said, go, and, you know, we'll meet you afterwards. And I went in there and went back to that same tree. And I just felt like I got a very clear message in that place, and it was an important message about, you know, doing my own work and not trying to do someone else's. So I haven't heard that message before, by the way, but to hear it from a tree.
I was just going to say, it's not the first time you heard that.
Not the first time, no, but it was it was just so clear, you know, and it was, yeah, it was personal, but it was very clear. So, yeah, I found that was a really quite a wonderful gift as well, because it had to do with, you know, a family dynamic. So it's amazing, you know, when your energy is, when you're receptive, I guess, you know, what you can receive. Quite wonderful.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was interesting. And actually, what was it? 2 years later, I had an opportunity to go on another pilgrimage to the Navagraha, but in a different place. So I took that opportunity and went with a group of people. And they were very different temples, but again, it was very powerful. And it did feel like another, you know, a journey with intention. So I really honor those. I think they're very beautiful.
Yes.
Mm.
And Linda, you also have another wonderful story about honoring your first teacher, Sri B.K. Iyengar, as well, right?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, so please share, because you know it's very important that people know, no matter what tradition they come from or where they go, it's important to honor the teachers who have brought us forward so far, rather than, you know, have some adversarial feelings towards them. So I think it's an important story. I think you should share it.
I think it was really it was a powerful moment, wasn't it? So when I was my very first um, teacher training was with my brother, as I mentioned before, and it was really not a teacher training as in modules. It was more like an apprenticeship, and he had done a teacher training program up in Auckland, and then established a studio, and he had organized to go to Pune to learn from Mr. Iyengar. And so he was wanting to go to India and left me to, or asked me to teach some classes while he was away. So that was my starting point. And I really loved that whole process of learning to teach. And it was sort of like, I think it sort of woke up in me the realization that that was what I wanted to do, or that's what I was supposed to be doing. So it was a really special time to discover that, because before that I had been working in graphic design and advertising, and it wasn't really fulfilling me. So that was really a wonderful sort of switch for me, you know, to start to do that. And but because I had sort of picked up these injuries and had struggled with the practice, I sort of had come to a place where I thought, you know, that practice was wrong somehow. It was just that I hadn't learned to listen to myself. You know, I was following someone else rather than understanding what was right for me. So, but it was sort of all wrapped up with injuries and, you know, regret and all that sort of stuff and frustration. So I'd sort of park that to one side. And but when my brother was in India, he had actually organized for us to go to Pune at the end of 1999. There was a special course, and he thought it might be nice for Andy and me to go, for my husband and I to go. But because all of the drama about Y2K, do you remember all of that drama?
Yeah, Y2K. Yeah.
We were too scared to travel and leave our children here, you know, in case we couldn't get back or whatever we thought was going to happen. So we never did go. And to be honest with you, I think I was too scared to go to India back then. I don't think I was brave enough to do that. It just felt like a, you know, like the kind of place that I wouldn't be able to keep everything under control, you know.
That's true.
So
In
thought,
India, nothing can be under control. I mean,
no,
not even for Indians.
I wasn't ready for that at that time. So the reason I'm saying all of that is because, you know, I had sort of thought about that and then thought, no, I can't do it. So I'd park that. And then when I did finally manage to find the courage to go to India, my mentor, I found myself in the first module of the teacher training, of the yoga therapy training, waking up one morning and reading in the newspaper that B.K. Iyengar had died. And I walked into the old KHYF at the same time as you. We exchanged a few words about that, but I think you must have seen something on my face, because I was quite sort of, I don't know, I was quite affected by that, you know, by reading that news, being in India finally, and then discovering that he had passed. So it just felt like, you know, quite a big moment. And you asked me if I wanted to say something in the class. My first instinct was, no, thank you. I don't want to say anything. But then I had the microphone in my hand, because we had a microphone for some reason. I'm not sure why. But as I started speaking, I don't know, I just sort of felt like all of this gratitude and love came up from somewhere. Just like that. And I just, really felt a very powerful connection to my, and a gratitude to B.K. Iyengar for all of the wisdom, you know, and all the work that he did, and all of the teaching, and just knowing, you know, how much that must have taken to do what he did, you know, and I know that, you know, what I was taught may or may not have been right for me at the time, or I may not have been able to take it in. I don't know, but what it sort of opened up in me was a realization that actually none of it was wrong, and that all of the other trainings I've done, you know, the ones I stuck with for years, and the ones I walked away from, I mean, none of that was wrong. It was just part of the process. And, you know, on that journey, I met some really wonderful people, and some of them are in Viniyoga now, like Janet Stevens,
Yeah.
who was, you know, on another course that I did, where I didn't find what I was looking for, but, you know, I found her, and we had a wonderful connection. So there are always treasures, aren't there, everywhere? And I just sort of felt that the timing of that and what it opened up for me was really quite amazing. It was just such an incredible moment to be in India finally, after, you know, all those years of feeling like I was too scared to go anywhere, to finally be in that place, and then have that realization that actually all the teachers that have taught me from a place of love, and they have taught me from a place of feeling that what they had found was true and good and worth sharing. So yeah, that was healing on that level, to know that.
Definitely. It's
also, I think on some level it also makes me realize that I'm going to be like that for some people. You know, they'll come to my class and go, yeah, that's not for me, and that's okay. Doesn't make it wrong, you know.
I'm sure, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, exactly. I mean, this has happened to every teacher in the world, and it will happen to every teacher in the world. There is no guarantee that all the people who walk through a teacher's class will remain with that teacher. People will have to find their own way, and that's the beauty of life. That's the beauty of life. Yeah. That's very great stories that you have shared. Thank you so much, and I think everybody's appreciating. And I can tell you, Janet Stevens is listening. She has just sent some comment as well a little while ago. You know, so she's definitely watching. She's definitely watching as well. Yeah, Lynda, there's one last question I have for you, because this series is called Viniyoga Women. So I just want to ask you if you feel that there is, what is your feeling about how Viniyoga appeals to you as a woman, not as just a human, but as a woman in particular?
Sort of, because you've asked this question, I knew that this question would be there, and there's quite a few different answers, I guess. One of them, I guess, is that as a woman, we do go through quite a few different stages and cycles, and I mean, from just my own experience, my body isn't always the same. So I've talked about that already, about that, the capacity to adapt what you're doing, and to adjust when you need to. But I think what I was thinking about too is that idea of what's been very powerful for me actually is Kriya Yoga, the concept of Kriya Yoga. Just that, that you can observe yourself, and that you can let go when you need to, and but to keep coming back to yourself. I think as a woman that can be, we can be quite busy out there looking after people and taking care of people, and I don't know, managing things, so that idea that actually it's about being here and taking care of yourself. I think that's a very strong message from Viniyoga, that we can only really work here. And I find that idea really powerful too. That Kriya Yoga cycle, I love it. I like teaching that too. I've taught a number of different courses with that as a theme, because I think it's a really powerful theme. So that's that. And I think also the layers. I think the Panchamaya model is really powerful for women too. So, because we have all those different things, and it really honors the emotional layer and what we can do for that, how we can practice for that.
Yep. Yep. That's great. That's great. A lot of very positive comments have come, Lynda, that you've shared so many wonderful stories. And I just want to say that all the stories that you've shared is also revealing that how brave you are to go through those processes, because there are many people who come to the tradition, to the teaching, saying that they want to heal and they want to transform, but when the push comes to shove, they back off. But through some of the stories that you have shared, and of course there are some stories you have not shared, which we know, you've actually been very, very brave, and you've actually gone through with that process. And I think that is really, really something that we must all appreciate, and you must be really proud of, because yoga is not for the weak-minded, and that's what I want to remind people. And that's why it's very auspicious that you started with Shraddha Suktam, because if you don't have that Shraddha and confidence, which Shraddha is also meaning confidence, faith and confidence, you're not going to go through the process. And you have been a good example of somebody who's actually gone through the process without backing away. There have been many people who back away once they come to the bridge, where they have to cross the bridge, and then they say, no, let me go back and rest in my safe space and or comfort zone. And many people don't dare to go out of the comfort zone. And you've been extraordinarily brave to go through that processes. I mean, not once, but multiple times. And so you should be very, very proud. And we are very proud of you. And I'm sure all the people watching here are touched by your example. And I'm sure some of them will also get inspired.
Thank you. I have to say, though, that I'm quite good at creating a comfort zone where I go.
Yeah. We know that. We all are very good. But at the same time, when it matters, you have taken the steps forward. And that is what is important.
I think, when you get to a point where the things that are going round and round get annoying enough, it propels you forward. It's like, I've had enough of that one now. I want a new samskara. Give me something else to work with. So. I wondered if I could share another chant.
Please, let's conclude with a very nice chant from you.
I wanted to finish with this chant because, well, partly because obviously I want to honor all of my teachers, but I also want to honor my students because they are part of the propulsion. You know, it's like that feeling that actually there is a responsibility there too is really helpful.
Right.
And yeah, and they do give that, you know, they don't know how much they give. So I wanted to chant this passage from the Upanishad, which is about Svadhyaya, and it's about learning and teaching. I just think it's a beautiful passage. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Ritancha Svadhyaya pravachane cha Satyancha Svadhyaya pravachane cha Tapascha Svadhyaya pravachane cha Damascha Svadhyaya pravachane cha Shamascha Svadhyaya pravachane cha Agnayascha Svadhyaya pravachane cha Agnihotrancha Svadhyaya pravachane cha Atitayascha Svadhyaya pravachane cha Manushancha Svadhyaya pravachane cha Prajacha Svadhyaya pravachane cha Prajanascha Svadhyaya pravachane cha Prajatischa Svadhyaya pravachane cha Satyamiti satyavacharati taraha Tapa iti tapo nitya paurushishtihi Svadhyaya pravachane eveti nako maudgalyaha tadhi tapastadhi tapaha.
Thank you, Linda, and thank you all for being there, my dear friends. And we'll meet you in another 2 weeks. Namaste.
Thank you, Pastor. Namaste.